Well, hi there, gang, and welcome to Kingdom Storytime with Pastor Scott. We are in the third book of the three-book series called Tales of the Kingdom by David and Karen Maines. Tonight's story is called Crossing Alone. Crossing Alone. A boy, no longer a child, but not yet a man, his narrow shoulders hunched against the night air, waited at the edge of the garbage dump for dawn. Little child's time had come to risk crossing, and he was cold. He flexed his fingers, he jogged in place, he tried to ignore the fear flip-flopping in his stomach. Where was the Princess Amanda, wondered little child. Why was she taking so long? And how did she get the courage to make crossings so often, to go back and forth from Great Park to Bright City? The garbage dump was a dangerous place. Though the enchanted city had been freed by the king from the curse of nightlife, and though the people now lived day lives and called their home Bright City, here in the awful place of ashes and rotting refuse, the naysayers, the burners, the breakers still hunted. Here they ambushed crossers who bravely worked for the restoration. At day's end, shadows began to creep out of hidey holes and from behind garbage mounds to breach the city walls and the protection of the ranger surround. To make havoc, these dark ones had to work quickly and with deceits, because in day their powers waned, so they cursed each dawn wake and exulted when sun sleep dimmed the skies. Brr! Little child blew on his fingers. He hummed a tune from Great Celebration to bolster himself against his own fear. He checked his survival kit, nose masks to protect against poison air, a silver-handled hatchet for battle, bread and water for one-day journey. Oh, he wished he could be like the older brother, if only he could have fought beside Hero in the War of Great Park, or with the underground fighters in the time of resistance. If only he too could have chronicled sightings of the king. He would have endured being a horrified witness at Burning Place for the glory of having seen the king rise laughing from the ashes in a fiery rosy wonder. Little child wished he could have danced in the great first celebration of the new day rising. But no, he had been too small, and slow growing at that, and assigned to Mercy's care. True, she and he had saved many lost babies in the Great Park nursery. True, too, he had become a skilled baby keeper. But baby keeping had everything to do with kindness and nothing to do with boldness. The thought of the narrow path through the garbage dump, the idea of pit traps and hidden bogmires made him long for the song of the tea kettle and the warmth of the fire. He sighed. He just had to face it. He was no hero. Little child crouched on his haunches and huddled for warmth. It was hard being the younger brother of a brave freedom fighter. Oh, he wished he didn't have to make crossing alone. But the rule determined. Only those brave enough to make crossing by themselves are ready to work in the restoration with others. In the dim light, he could just make out the words chiseled in the stone arch above the gate at his back, "Welcome all who hunt." At last, day was coming. Tendrils of smoke could be seen curling from the hovels of the No People who hid in the mounds of decaying refuse. Over this desecrated wasteland, a purple line of light, jagged between earth and sky, like an ominous scar on the coming day. More than anything, more even than his pulsing fear, little child wanted to work in the restoration. "To the kingdom," he whispered to himself for comfort. "To the king." Little child saw a puff of dust unscrolling far down the narrow path before him. He stood to his feet and narrowed his gaze. A figure, still distant, came to sight. It was the princess. He would soon hear her laughter. She was the wind in the air. She was of the wind in the air, of the liveliness of growing things, of the shining sun and the greening earth. Always she came back to Great Park with gladness, having made the dangerous circuit once again unharmed. Was this Amanda? Ah, yes. There was the clear laugh. "I see," she called. I see. I'm sorry. Elsie, standing for little child. Elsie, she called. Elsie, I'm coming. I'm coming. Breathlessly, a tall young woman reached Stone Gate entrance, grabbed the boy to stop her flight, then whirled them both round and round. Oh, Elsie, Elsie! She called them by the nickname she herself had given him years before. Today you make crossing. I'm so proud of you. All your friends in Bright City can't wait for you to be arriving. Hero said to hurry. Despite his fears, little child laughed to see her. Yet when she tried to talk, his tongue tangled. The moment he had been dreading was upon him. Amanda had crossed at night, risking peril to scout the path. He must return now by himself. Is it a bad crossing today? Is it particularly a bad crossing? The Princess Amanda had stopped returning. Her hair was wild and fell in wind-tumbled tangles. Her cheeks were flushed and high with color. He wore the royal blue running garments of a restoration worker, and the silver insignia of loyalty embroidered high on his left shoulder. On her feet were dusty felt boots. His eyes sparkled, blue as cornflowers in July sunshine. But at his question, she held the boy at arm's length to look at him seriously. Elsie, you can't doubt that you're ready. Doubting only makes it worse. Besides, Mercy and Caretaker say that you are ready, and Hero is impatient, asking for you every day. I only want to know that what I might be facing. Is it particularly a difficult crossing? Amanda put her arm around the boy's shoulders. She pulled him near her side, and together they faced the garbage dump. Beyond that, showing gray and sleepy through the morning mist, stood the Bright City. I can only tell you that it is not the most difficult crossing today, but it is not the easiest one. She dropped her hand from the boy's shoulder and smiled directly at him. Early light was fully upon them. Hurry now. If it becomes a particularly bad crossing, you will need to hold day so you will not be in the wasteland when night comes. The rules, she demanded. Repeat to me all Caretaker's crossing rules. Little child clicked his heels to attention, lifted his chin, and repeated the rules. 1. Always stay on the path. Do not take any shortcuts or detours. 2. Remember that although you are traveling alone, you are not really alone. 3. Use your greatest gift while crossing. 4. The path will always show itself if you wait. 5. Only those brave enough to make crossing alone are ready to work for the restoration with others. Smiling brightly, the princess saluted quickly, then walked towards Stone Gate entrance. The iron gate opened before her, and when she was beneath the arch, she called back, "Hurry, don't delay!" And she was gone. Little child faced the garbage dump. He forced himself toward whatever awful unknowns were ahead, alone. The path before him led deep into the very heart of the dump. Mounds of rotting garbage were heaped high and stretched far as the eye could see. Ugly black flies gorged on the refuse. Even in early morning, the air felt hot. Piles of cast-off machines and broken things and discarded belongings and moldering cloths made places for dark things to hide. The boy had not gone far before he was out of sight of the entrance. The polluted air stank in his nostrils, and he covered his nose with a breathing mask. As he followed the way around a mountain of disgusting garbage, his heart suddenly leaped. Not far, but off the path, was a rusting pickup truck, and sitting in it an old man who looked exactly like Caretaker. "Elsie," he called. "Elsie, Mercy and I are concerned about you making this crossing alone. Come, I know all the shortcuts. We'll drive you the rest of the way together." Oh, little child was glad. He wanted to shout. Now he would quickly see his friends. He would have a safe and easy crossing, and soon be in Bright City with his brothers. He stepped off the path and hurried toward the truck, but a question nagged inside. Would Caretaker break his own rules? Always stay on the path, he had said. No, Caretaker would not break his own rules. Little child tore himself from his longing for an easy journey, ran back to the path, and raced on as fast as he could. A chilling laugh tripped his going. Looking back, he saw the old man rise, tear off a disguise, and uncover the chalk-white face, the smirking grin of a breaker. Shaking an ugly, knobbed, and brutal club over his head, the dark thing laughed again. Wah! Little Child shivered at the sight. He was in for it now. Because of breaking the rule, this, not the most difficult of crossings, was liable to become particularly difficult. Sure enough, somewhere from the middle of the dump, a dull drum started to pound. Boom, boom, boom. The breaker shouted, taunting him. "Na, na, 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 you stepped off the path." The drum again. Boom, boom, boom. A signal now. All the dark things at hidden checkpoints would know he was coming, and that he was weak, and that he could be fooled by deceits. Little Child's heart pounded hard. He had only started, and already he had almost failed. He bolstered his going by humming the hymn of courage. He was woefully off tune, but the sound of the hymn, even without the words, steadied him a while. On he struggled, one foot in front of the other, as the minutes slowly turned into hours. By midday high, the wretched place had filled him with despair. He struggled up a putrid mountain of refuge he had been climbing for what felt like an hour. 5 steps up, a slithering slide back, forward. Whatever would he ever get out of here? Little Child looked around. He could see neither Great Park behind him or bright city before him, but he could still hear those drums. He could still remember the haunting laugh of the breaker, and suddenly a terrible howl stopped him in his slipping tracks. Arrrr! Arrrr! Cautiously, he crested the top of the garbage mound. He ripped off the nose mask and, panting hard from the long climb, and he looked down. A pack of wild wolves, yapping and slathering, waited below, pacing to and fro across the path. Some lifted on hind legs to peer over the rest, but all the fierce heads were turning up toward him. Overwhelmed with terror, Little Child ducked low, turned to hide, pressed his spine up against the black ridge of the hill. How could he possibly follow the path through the middle of those wild beasts? He noticed a sign beside him, its letters faded by smoke and weather. Detours, wolves ahead. Then in smaller letters printed beneath those, he could just make out the words, Friends of Crossers Association. A 2-headed arrow split in half pointed to the right and to the left of the path. Arrrr! Arrrr! The wolves howled. They would tear him apart. They would shred his flesh and swallow him, bones and all. The path was clear ahead of him, cutting directly through the pack of wolves. He could see it. But now it was not so clear behind him. If he went back, he might lose his way. What was the true thing to do? He started to scramble along a side detour, terror pushing him with its eager hand. He lost his footing in the ash heap and twisted his knee. He gripped frantically at the protruding bar of iron and the rubbish, slowing his side. Wait, what was the truth here? What was the truth? The rule. 1, do not take any detours or shortcuts. Little Child took the silver-handled workman's hatchet from his survival kit. Holding it before him, he slowly began to inch his way back to the path. The detours were a sore temptation, but taking them, he might lose his way. 5 steps forward, a slipping down. Forward, despite his throbbing knee, a sliding again. Forward against his fear, pushing him back. He crested the hill for a second time. At the sight of him, the wolves below bayed frantically. Arr, 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 arr. Little Child began to slide, stiff-legged down the hill. Beads of sweat glistened on his forehead. The handle of the hatchet felt slick in his palm. Looking behind, he watched small avalanches of falling garbage bury the path. The way to retreat now had completely disappeared. Inching, sliding, he reluctantly went forward, closer. Now a yellow light of hunger showed in the eyes of the yapping wolves. Their lips curled, their teeth were bared. Front froth foamed on their jaws. To the king, he spoke aloud, and the words seemed to come from somewhere inside him. To the kingdom! Strength filled his arm. A surge of power firmed his grip. Though I am traveling alone, I am not really alone, he repeated to himself. Rule 2. And at this moment he remembered he was in the hearts of all who loved him. Suddenly he wanted battle. He wanted to howl back as loudly as the wolves. Arr, arr! Nothing would stop him from serving alongside his oldest brother. How dare anyone try? Others had made crossing alone before him. He too would be do brave acts for the king. Lifting his head in the direction of Bright City, he yelled forth the mighty challenge, "To the kingdom! To the king of the restoration!" Enraged at the thought that this motley pack of flea-bitten dogs would try to keep him from the work of the restoration, Little Child charged. Scrambling down the hill, attacking boldly, the boy rushed to the middle of the yapping pack, and he planted his feet firmly, and with anger began to circle faster and faster with the hatchet before him, hacking and whacking all in its way. Turn, turn, the beast yipped. Turn, turn, they whined. As at a signal, they scrambled to flee, their tails tucked between their legs. Yip, 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 yip. Little Child watched them go, amazed at their cowardly retreat. Yes! He lifted his arms and circled in victory, his fists clenched above his head. Yes! Yes! He two-stepped a warrior's stamp on the ground. Yes! He beat on his chest. Yes! He was a mighty warrior. Little Child, the solitary victor in the battle of the wolves. Mercy always said the fear is more in the going than in the doing. Yes! But before he had a moment to savor the victory, a choking darkness descended. An ominous fog that blinded his vision. He could no longer see the path before him. Was it night so soon? Had the battle of the wolves taken this a whole afternoon? The drum beat he had been hearing all through the crossing quickened. Din, 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 din. And he remembered a scene from long ago, from a time before he knew Great Park, when he truly was a little child. Two boys fleeing from Enchanted City. Ba, ba, ba. Oh, the death drums pursuing. Ba, ba, ba. Confusing shadows, gray and ominous, lurched at him, bumped him, fear battered, trapping the breath in his chest, and he choked on the stink in the air. His twisted knee hobbled him. He fought for firm footing. Had nightlife caught him between Great Park and Bright City? Was he now under the enchanter's power? Leering yellow eyes peered out of the dark. Here, there, something caught in his jacket, held. He jerked free. Voices whispered close, whispered dread. Nay, 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 too late, too long. You are ours, day is gone. The sound of the naysayers. Chorus stabbed a cold streak of terror between the little child's shoulder blades. Nay, 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 ours, ours, ours. Wait a moment. Think. Rule 3. Use your greatest gift when crossing. What was his greatest gift? Mercy always said he had the gift of truth. Truth. So what was the truth of the matter here? The truth was the sun was mid-high when he mounted the hill. The truth was the battle could only have taken a few moments. Little Child opened his survival kit. The doom drums sounded closest, sounding faster. He felt the loaf of bread, broke off a morsel, and ate it for strength, drank some water from the jug. He breathed deeply, slightly calmer. He grasped the silver handle of the hatchet tightly. Not to doubt. This way? That way? Where was the path? What? Was he still on it? Which direction was Bright City? Rule 4. The path will always show itself to you if you wait. He held the cool blade of the hatchet to his brow and bent his head to think. He closed his eyes. What exactly was the truth here? The truth was that he had won the battle of the wolves, that they had fled before him. The truth was that it couldn't be night already. Wait, he said to himself. Just wait a little. A silence descended, more terrible than the night and the noises, and then a voice, cold, ill. You are mine. You are all mine. The enchanter. Little Child lifted his head from the blade. His hand trembled. What was the truth here? What was the truth? Did he belong to the enchanter? No. Mercy and Caretaker had called him their own. He would not doubt. I am a king's man, he shouted. A shriek of terror tore the dark and the silence and the stench. Ah! You are mine, all mine! Little Child's knees buckled. He held the hatchet above his head and shouted back, "You lie! I am a king's man, and I keep the king's ways." And the voice answered back, "Mine! Mine! Mine!" But it seemed weaker, fading farther away. "King's man!" Who said that? He wondered. These were no voices. "Come, king's man! You are almost here!" The darkness shifted. Wait, what was that? Something shining in... No, something shining beyond the false light. Something ahead of him. It looked like the shape of a city high above. Despite his fear of the dark things so near, despite his terror of the evil voice that sought to possess him, Little Child called out, "Bright city! Bright city!" And with each shout, the choking fog of all ill faded. With each shout, light became brighter. Above, the sun was at early afterhigh. Little Child could see the path clearly before him. Glancing neither right nor left, he followed, not stopping to rest or to think. "Hurrah! Yes! Hooray!" A clamor. Then solo voices. "LC, over here! You made it, King's man! You made crossing alone!" The boy lifted his eyes. There, the bright city dazzling in daylight. A watch horn blared. "Cry, cry!" Voices shouted, "Crossing! Crossing!" And on the city walls, and as it opened its gates, a crowd of restoration workers waved streamers and yelled, jumping up and down in welcome. And there among them stood a young man, tall and broad-shouldered, his blue dress uniform braided with silver and light flashing off the insignia of his shoulder. It was Hero, his brother. Hero looped down the path to gently gather Little Child into his strong embrace. "Ah, lad, I'm so proud of you. I'm so very proud of you. You made it alone. Was it a particularly difficult crossing?" "Oh, more difficult than many," answered the boy, tempted to boast with safety at hand. Then truth reminded him, "But not as hard as some, I suppose." After all, he was standing among the most seasoned fighters of the resistance, men and women who really knew the meaning of battle. The two brothers, one tall and muscular, the other slender and limping slightly, walked together to the gates of the city. Hero flung his arm around the boy's shoulder. "Oh, welcome, welcome! You made crossing alone, and now you're worthy to work in the restoration. And now, oh, how we need you. Truth teller, how we need you." They faced each other before entering the watch gates. They clasped each other's wrists in the ranger clasp. The watch cried out the old familiar shout, "The kingdom comes!" This cry of greeting echoed from post to post along the ranger surround which circled the wall of the bright city. "The kingdom comes! The kingdom comes! The kingdom!" And never was there a Little Child more glad to receive a hero's welcome, or to come at last to the safe place where the end of the crossing is also the beginning of the rest of the way. Ah, what a great story. This is so wonderful, and in the crossing that we make into being of service, no longer obsessed with self and selfish ways, but born anew, born from a heaven, born not only of the flesh but of the spirit, and crossing over into being set apart. The big word there is sanctified for service, and acting in that, living in that. I pray you're sanctified today and set apart for God, and you're living in that, making that crossing over from self to serve. May God bless you. I'm Pastor Scott from Washington Alliance Church. This has been Kingdom Stories, the third book in a series by David and Karen Maines called Tales of the Kingdom. And we're in the book called Tales of the Restoration. I look forward to seeing you join us again. God bless you.